And we welcome you to episode 17 of the Exit Philosophy podcast. Griff and I come into this show 2.5 games. Can't be talking about the Blue Jays playoff picture just yet. We are here. We are on time. Episode 17 of the Exit Philosophy podcast. And a reminder, you can get Griff's work, the complete catalog. Catalog sounds so formal. And that's why I use it. At griffsthepitch.com, multiple Blue Jays and MLB columns each week. You also get a weekly MLB Power Rankings column, exclusive conversations with some of the game's greats, past and present. The most recent conversation Griff had was with Montreal Expos great Steve Rogers, and you also get the Exit Philosophy podcast at griffsthepitch.com. And we want to shout out our good friend who has been helping us out with the new logo here, Giovanni Siciliano. And the Exit Philosophy logo is brand new. It's bright. And Griff, we're going with it. So thank you, Giovanni.
I got to wear dark glasses just to look at it, you know?
The future's so bright.
Right.
We're actually not wearing sunglasses. Actually, is the future bright? Because as we sit here right now, on Monday, August the 28th, with the Washington Nationals coming to town to play the Blue Jays, the Jays find themselves, Griff, 2.5 games out of the third and final wild card spot.
I'm still marveling at that segue, the way you went from bright into dismal almost.
Darkness.
But I think, I mean, we've talked about it before, but I think that the Blue Jays still, you know, that was a devastating losing 2 out of 3, and Noah Syndergaard got DFA'd right after his start, where his team beat the Blue Jays. It's a game they could have won so many times going into the last several innings. They had the lead after 7 and still managed to lose. But they're in a soft part of their schedule. We've talked about this before, and it's one thing to say that they have to take advantage of this part of the schedule. It's another for them to actually do it. And we've talked about the reasons they have not, what they need to do to take advantage of the next 12 games as we talk going into the National Series. But the Nationals are playing better. The Nationals are a much improved team. They just re-signed Dave Martinez for a few more years. They extended him. And this is a good young team and the type of team that may give the Blue Jays problems.
Yeah, the Nationals have won 16 of their last 24 games coming into their series with the Blue Jays in Toronto, although they did drop their series finale to the Marlins 2-1 on Sunday, August the 27th. So we'll focus on a couple of the key issues in Blue Jays land right now, and then we got a big one for you. And we're really looking forward to this because this is the 17th episode, as I said off the top, of the Exit Philosophy podcast. The first where Griff and I are welcoming a guest. And we're really excited because in just a few minutes, the former manager of the Blue Jays, John Gibbons, will be with us. So I would anticipate, Griff, knowing Gibby as you and I both do, you have a relationship with him longer than I do because you covered both of his times managing the Blue Jays. The conversation, we'll have some laughs. We'll reflect. It'll be a good one.
Really looking forward to it. And like you said, it's a relationship that goes back. In fact, I'm one of the few people who saw John Gibbons' first major league hit. I mean, few people that are a part of where we are right now.
So that was an Expos Mets game when it happened?
Yeah.
And was that 84?
Yeah, it was before Gary Carter got there, and
right
before he got injured at spring training. It might have been, I think it was 84. Yeah,
wild stuff.
All those years run together because I saw every game for 20-some years.
We'll have to go back and look it up, Griff. And
yeah, for sure.
I mean, almost 40 years ago, which in and of itself is totally crazy.
Here, but before we get any deeper, I just got a text message from the Blue Jays, and Matt Chapman's going on the 10-day IL, and
with
Ernie Clement Ernie Clement being called up, and I'm sure he's not going to be the one playing third base every day, but we may get to see more of Kevin Biggio and and Santiago Espinal maybe platooning at third base. So, but the way,
how do you want me to react to that comment?
Well, let's go to where you were going.
Incorporate it. I'm great to see. It's great to see Kevin Biggio a little more. I just don't want to see him bunting. Anyway, because John Gibbons is coming up, we can't necessarily drill down into deep specifics, but I think there are two topics, Griff, you and I want to touch on right now. And again, the Jays are 2.5 games out of a wild card spot, with Washington coming in for a 3-game series as we sit here on Monday, August the 28th. Kevin Gausman, after his last start, he was good again, and he lost because the Blue Jays didn't score any runs. And the offense has been an issue this year for this team. That is undeniable. They are, in terms of run scoring, one of the lowest producing Blue Jays teams in recent decades, to give you context. And Gausman called his team out after his start when he spoke to the media. And it was one of those look at your watch or look at the calendar on the wall moments and say, like, it's late August. We got to have a sense of urgency here. Stuff needs to start to happen. And a day or two later, the general manager, Ross Atkins, is in the dugout talking to the assembled media and is still holding out hope that there will be some, quote, regression to the mean, as people like to say, because the Blue Jays, in terms of batted ball metrics, are hitting the ball hard. It just tends to be right at people. And that would be an argument specifically for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and for the team in general. That may be true, but it also feels like stake in the ground number one for the excuses that may start to flow if this team that was supposed to contend for its division title and a World Series falls short of making the postseason in this expanded playoff format.
Well, in the last 30-some games, or I think it's down to 30 games now, you can't rely on solid day in and day out starting pitching. All starting pitching can do for you is set the platform, the 6 or 7 inning platform for a winning game. And it comes down to the offense. And the Seattle Mariners are a perfect example of that, with Julio Rodriguez setting the tone for that team. He's on the highlights every night, and somebody else joins him every night, a different player, Suarez or one of those people. But the Blue Jays have not had anyone step up, and they have people who have showed in the past that they can be that guy and then drag people with them, drag players with them. And it's got to be Bo, it's got to be Vlad. There's a lot of complementary players, but those two guys, one of them has to step up. And every time, the frustration in late innings of seeing Vlad step up to the plate and hit a first pitch at somebody, it could be hard, could be a great defensive play, but the bottom line is it does not produce wins. And the Jays are looking for that player, that combination of players that the Mariners have found. And Gausman is right. They can only do so much as starting pitchers, especially in this day and age where you're not going the distance anymore, where you're going 7 innings, and that's a great outing. But for him to step up and actually voice that message to his teammates tells you something. You've been around a long time, Scotty. What does it tell you?
Well, I look at it, Griff. Kevin Gausman is a Major League Baseball player and one of the better pitchers in the sport. So I'm going to just step back and say unequivocally the most obvious comment out there. Kevin Gausman understands the game a little bit better than me, a little bit better than you. And by a little bit, I mean a lot of bit. He would understand that urgency doesn't mean swing the bat harder. He would understand that urgency doesn't mean rear back and throw one of your 110 pitches that you get every 5 days harder. Urgency in baseball, it's not, as they like to say, like hockey, where if you haven't scored a goal in 10 games, you can go and whack somebody in the corner. and maybe help change the momentum in a flow game. Baseball's not that. So my read between the lines is Kevin Gausman is saying there are some approaches on this team that aren't working. And the approaches have been adhered to for far too long into this season, given the lack of expected production from certain guys. We need to make adjustments, and we need those adjustments to be executed now. That's my read on it.
And maybe Gausman is smart enough to realize that this would be a perfect time to step up and to say that, because of the strength of schedule for the next 2 weeks, where God knows they should have beat Cleveland 2 out of 3 or swept them, but 2 out of 3 would have been reasonable. And now they've got series against the Nationals, the Rockies, the A's, and the Royals. So what better time for Gausman to step up and ask somebody to produce, except in a situation like, what better time than a situation where you're facing that run of teams, and maybe it will have, and once they get into a role, once they find that 1 or 2 players to step up, then they need to carry it on into the stretch drive, starting with the Texas Rangers 4-game series.
Yeah, and keep in mind, they hold the tiebreaker over the Houston Astros, the team they are closest to that occupies a playoff spot. Right now, they don't hold the tiebreaker over the Texas Rangers, but they've got 4 games with them that if they have a good series against Texas, they could take that tiebreaker, and that could matter down the road. John Gibbons is going to join us in just a couple of minutes here on episode 17 of the Exit Philosophy podcast. So just want to rifle through one more thing. The Alek Manoah situation, something Ross Atkins also addressed the other day when he spoke to the media, Griff, that the reason Manoah didn't report to AAA Buffalo, and this seemed shrouded in secrecy for quite a while after he was demoted, was that they were running a series of medical tests on him, and that they cleared this with Major League Baseball, because usually if you're demoted, you've got 48 or 72 hours to get to your minor league affiliate. This is, and I will stick to what I said last week. We are past this Manoah storyline, narrative, arc affecting the clubhouse. I really don't think one way or the other it matters now. I mean, he's just been a non-factor, and when he's been on the mound, he's been hurtful to the team more than he's been helpful this year, after really being a big help and a Cy Young contender last year and a great rookie year in 2021. So I don't think it matters inside the clubhouse doors. He just somehow, some way needs to get right for 2024. But the handling of this is something that leaves a lot of questions floating out there. I mean, what are the physical tests for? If you knew he was injured, why were you sending him out there? Well, he wasn't injured, and our medical people would have told us if he was, said Ross Atkins. So they were just running him through a battery of stuff before sending him to Buffalo. This has been the weirdest fall from grace with a possibility that it is just as likely as not to have a bounce back next year for a guy who was uber dominant at the start of his career that we've ever witnessed. This is bizarre at this point.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan at all of the way that the front office, the Blue Jays front office, has handled this situation. It's as if Manoah has disappeared and they would rather him not speak the rest of the season, which of course, when he gets to Buffalo, and I believe he's already in Buffalo, is going to happen. He's going to talk to guys, maybe Mike Harrington with the Buffalo News, but whatever the true story is, and this is not the true story, there's no doubt in my mind that you don't need a week or 10 days for a battery of medical tests. And if it is medical tests, they should have put him on the IL, because that's the proper way of doing it. He's got a split contract where he gets half of his value in the minor leagues that he would get at the major leagues. So there's no way that he would accept that if it was medical tests. There's no way that the service time because there's another shrouded in mystery thing, is that with this extra time that he gets in the minor leagues, he has no chance of being a Super 2, which means he would be eligible for arbitration even before reaching 3 full seasons in the big leagues. And that was part of the basic agreement that was negotiated many years ago. But so just counting the days, he's now going to max out at 2 years and 61 days. He's not, as you said, Scotty, he's not factoring into the rest of the 2023 season, because even if he got 2 or 3 starts in Buffalo, Bowden Francis is a much better option to pitch 4 or 5 innings, even 3 innings, if one of the current 5-man rotation goes down to injury. So there's just too much that was not explained, too much that should have been explained by the Blue Jays front office, and just another situation that they have not handled to the max.
Well, Griff, it's time.
It's time. I'm looking forward to it.
Are you ready to welcome in our guest?
I've been looking forward to this. He's not the easiest guy because he's so busy with his own podcast and with his book promotion tour, and I think you probably mention to him when we get on the appearance that you have lined up shortly in Western Canada. So we'll get into all that stuff, but I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a great however many minutes he gives us.
Now it's time for the main event. This is a booking, Griff, by the way, that we've been waiting for probably for longer than Gibby knows. But I think we gotta make him wear this one. We've been trying to secure this booking for months and months and months here on Exit Philosophy.
Yeah, this will be like Elvis's '68 return concert. You know, it'll live forever.
Yeah, but it'll probably end up being like Elvis in Vegas in '76, right, Gib?
What, you guys lose my number or something, or what?
Well, we didn't want to interfere with the Gibby show, which is turning out to be one of the biggest podcasts in Canadian sports history.
Oh God! Either that, or you wanted to wait till the team starts struggling, because I'm so knowledgeable about Blue Jays teams struggling. So I saw so many of them.
And such a positive influence too.
Yes.
How's the
Hey,
Gibby
it's good to
show
see you
going?
guys. Yeah, obviously. Well, if I have one, anybody can do it. But now the fact that you both have one too, but you guys are real media darlings. You've been in the trenches of what media is all about. You know, covering sports. So you guys are real. I'm still a little fake.
Well, you got a guy on the side who looks like he knows exactly what he's doing. Your co-host. I mean, yeah. I got Scotty. I thought Scotty would know everything about the technology. Turns out all he ever did was sit down, talk, get up, and leave.
Exactly. But that's back when you just had to write things down, right? Now that everything's computer, there you go. Oh. Can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Oh, hell no. These notes are left over from when you were here.
Did you even read the chicken scratch?
It's still using the quotes. Still using the quotes and just changing the name.
Correct. Although yours were no, I won't even talk about that. Anyway, we're ready to go and find out all about John Gibbons and what he thinks about everything in the sports and baseball world. Let's go, Scotty.
Yeah, and Gibby, part of the reason we're having you on is you and I are really looking forward to an event that we'll be working on together the night of Thursday, September the 7th. So as we sit here on Monday, August the 28th, it's about a week and a half away. You and I are going to Lloydminster, Alberta, and we'll be a part of the Evening of Champions there, hosted by the Lloydminster Bobcats Junior A hockey team. You, John Shannon, and all the players. It's a big night out in Lloyd. There will be an auction. It'll be a blast.
Yeah, who's the champion in this group, by the way? Do we have one? You said Night of Champions.
Well, I'm assuming the Lloydminster Bobcats are, and I do believe there's at least one banner hanging in the Rogers Center for a team that you managed, maybe two. Maybe two.
Okay. Hey, all I know, Scotty, I'm excited about it. You know, I love it out west there. You know, I've done a couple shows out there in the last few years, and yeah, I'm excited. So that a week from now, you're going to give me like the questions you're going to ask me in advance, so I don't.
The only thing I'm going to ask permission for is, can I imitate you? And I might even be asking permission to do that at some point in this conversation.
Yes, hey, it's all fair games.
Awesome. Gibby, when Scotty's talking about the banner hanging down at Rogers Center, I mean, just Bobby Cox, Cito, and you are responsible for all the banners hanging at Rogers Center. So that's select company. And there was one thing I noticed at the Jose Bautista level of excellence is the five biggest ovations were you, Cito, Beeston, Edwin, and freaking Ryan Goins. What's up with that? How did you make a scrub reserve infielder into a local legend?
Hey, Griff, you know what? He is a beloved guy, you know. There's actually a banner hanging up there. What did we get a banner for? I thought you had to win something to have a banner. I didn't. Just
you won your
win
division.
The division.
Yeah, you beat Texas twice.
But so they give you a banner for that, huh?
Yeah.
You won the wild card in 16. Yeah.
But I thought you had to win like the American League to go to the World Series, or you had to actually win the World Series. I don't mean to sound ignorant, but I guess I'm wrong.
Not in our world.
It's truly an honor. There's no doubt, you know. And I tell you that celebration was incredible. You know, it's a good chance to see some of the old friends. You know, in the ovation they gave me, I didn't deserve that, but it was awful nice.
There were some photos of you sitting with Cito during the game. How was that? I mean, I know that your relationship probably was just superficial before that, but did you learn a lot? Did you guys share things in that conversation during the game that showed a mutual understanding of what you guys both went through?
Yeah, we did a lot of bitching and moaning too. I'll tell you that. But you know what? I've always been a big fan of Cito's. You know, when I was managing, he'd come spring training, he'd come down, and we'd you know, plus he's from San Antonio, my hometown.
Well, that's it. That's crazy that both you guys are from there.
Exactly. You know, so and what we were doing that day, I actually booted Beeston out of his chair. Beeston was sitting up behind us, you know. But we just talked about the game today, how the current team's playing, and you know, the rule changes, things like that. And I was talking to Cito a lot about hitting, because you know he's known as a great hitting instructor, rightfully so. He's you know, he's helped many a guy, and he's, of course, Bautista's one of them. Yeah, and it was just kind of we compared the times a little bit to when you know, back when he was managing, and in the current day, and even in my time, you know, and the different players on the team. It was just sucked down a couple beers, and it was kind of reminisced a little bit.
One of my favorite managers other than you was Buck Rogers. And Buck Rogers left the game as a manager at Milwaukee, and then he took a couple of years where he wasn't managing, and nobody thought he would again. He was, in fact, not even in uniform. And then he came back and managed in Montreal. And he said that he had learned so much while he was away. You had a gap between your first and your second time, and you were coaching in Kansas City, and then San Antonio, you were managing there. Did you learn anything that really helped you your second time, other than liking me more?
Since you kind of spearheaded the effort to get me back that second time, didn't you?
Yes.
You know what, Griff? I think you naturally do when you get a chance to back off a little bit. You know, when I went to Kansas City right away, you know, I was a bench coach, right? And when you don't have to make the actual decision, you know, it's things aren't happening as fast. You're discussing things with the manager, what he may be able to do, but you kind of look at things a little bit differently, right? And if things backfire, it's not your fault. But I think experience teaches you everything. And even then, when I went back down to AA here in San Antonio before I went back up to Toronto, at that level, you know, where the young players, they all think they got a chance, right? They're all in the upswing. You get a great effort every night, and you really go back to the basics of baseball. and sometimes we get away from that in the big leagues. These guys do things so easily, and the game's changed, and that back then, like Moneyball and all the analytics and stuff. You just go back to the roots of the games, and I kind of think that puts you back on track a little bit.
When I flew down to San Antonio after your announcement of your 2012 hiring for the 2013 season, we went out to San Antonio office and to see the ballpark and whatever. You were my tour guide, except when you couldn't find the Alamo, but that's all right. But we went to the San Antonio ballpark, and it was stunning how much those people, the office staff, the people around the ballpark, all loved John Gibbons. How is that possible?
Hey, Griff, you're the only one that didn't. So that's a surprise. No, I got to tell you, hey, Griff and I, my first go around, Griff, we butted heads every now and then, right? We both.
Often, yeah. You yelled at me.
Did I? But I consider us both straight shooters. But you know what? We've turned into really good friends with a lot of respect for each other. And you know what? We have fun together. But I'm not recognized in San Antonio hardly ever, unless it's an old friend of mine or something like that. But the fact that I was going to take over a team there, other than that, I couldn't have told you where that stadium was, much less the Alamo, for crying out loud.
I got one more question before handing it to Scotty for a couple, but and I've written about this many times, is that you're the only manager in Major League history who never applied for a job. You were standing in the middle of the clubhouse. You're standing in the middle of the clubhouse when Carlos Tosca was fired, and JP Ricciardi said, "Don't go anywhere, Gibby." And he went and fired Tosca and came out and said, "You're the manager." Nice interview, Gibby.
Yeah. Hey, I'm the welfare manager, man. I never applied for anything.
And then the second time you flew to Toronto expecting to be hired as a bench coach or an advanced scout or some other role. And Alex Anthopoulos says, "Gibby, you want to be the manager?" And you said, "Sure." Like, how does that happen?
Well, I've never been accused of being the smartest guy. Maybe my instincts aren't very good. Maybe I didn't see the signs of possibilities. No, you know what? I've interviewed for a few managing jobs since I left Toronto. So maybe that's a good thing, because when I interview, I don't seem to get them.
Gib, I'll peel the curtain back if you're good with it, just like, because I certainly wasn't the only one, but I think one of the things that I enjoyed, and I wouldn't be, again, the only one in this, in covering you and covering your teams, is that there were always opportunities throughout a season, because, man, those seasons are long. And when you're on the road each and every day, especially when you are on the road, there's more time to kick back in the office and all that. And I was new on the beat in 2013. And you guys scuffled out of the gate. You remember that well. And the season didn't go as I think Alex and you thought it would after the big trades with the Marlins and the Mets. And I can't remember the exact date, but I do remember the month. It was June. And I felt like it was the first time, because, again, I was new. You were back. I was new. It was the first time where you and I had like just a chat about life. And you asked me a question that seems so foreign and bizarre now, given the adulation and the love that the city and the country show you today. You said, "Scotty, why don't they like me?" You remember that?
We'll try winning a few games.
Yeah, well, no, but like winning helps. Winning helps. But I honestly, man, I think it's just, you got away, you went to Kansas City, you came back. It took a little while to have some success, but it's just a reminder of, like, people evolve, right? We all get a little more comfortable in who the heck we are as time goes on, and we gain more experience. It doesn't matter if you're in media, you're a manager of a baseball team, you work in corporate America, whatever. You just get more comfortable.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Hey, that was a year you were with. Yeah, I don't think you had a day off, did you? That whole year?
There were 3 years in a row. Yeah,
was it 3? Oh my God!
You couldn't get rid of me. You couldn't get rid of me.
Hair's so long now.
I'm surprised it's not gray yet.
Yeah, Scotty, I do remember that. it's funny, my first go round, I think I was tied to JP Richard. He gave me the job, and he was a lightning rod. He wasn't well liked, at the time. So that's kind of, and the team we weren't very good, right? And of course, then when you go away, and then I can remember though telling Alex when he, like Griff, you were talking about offering me the job that second go around. I said, listen, he had already made the deal with the Marlins, Burley, and Reyes, and those guys, and I said, you're not gonna get away with this, man. They're gonna kill you over this. Hire me. They're gonna want a named guy that's had some success. He said, don't worry about it. I can take care of it. And then I told him, I said, and Bautista, no way he's signing off on it. He goes, let me take care of that. Of course, then they said, okay. So now, now all this optimism, right? Because the big trades, and then you get old Nuxie. Nuxie shows up. It's like, we're going to win the World Series. But I knew deep down that, it's never that easy. And there was a little hesitation there a little bit, right? I didn't think you have to earn it. There's no way your team's going to be that good right away. But yeah. So when we got off to a slow start, I think we had a 10 or 11 game win streak just to get back to 500 that year.
Shin Ming Wong drove it, baby. Shin Ming Wong.
That's right. Yeah. I remember. Oh, what a blast from the past. So anyway, so it was like, but I understood that because, all the optimism going into the year, but we stink out of the gates. We're not playing up to our potential. So you're definitely not going to like the manager. I mean, that's people go after you like that. But I think what happened over time is I think people really got to know me, and they figure, well, hey, Gibbons isn't going to BS me too much. I may not agree with him. I may not care for him, but he's going to tell me what he thinks. He's honest, and he's going to give you a good effort. Honest effort. I don't know, good effort, but then again, you're on TV every night as the face of the team, right? The manager's got to go out in front. So then they saw me every day, so they couldn't help. They at least recognized me. But then things finally started turning. It took a little while. They were probably, I guarantee the majority of them thinking, their team's good enough, Gibbons, get Gibbons out of here, right? And I couldn't blame them. That's sports, professional sports. But then when things turned, I was caught up in that, and I was identified with that group. And then Alex goes, he's the savior, in the team. And it had been so long, so anybody involved with that team is seen in a good light now. But I think it's more than that. I think, I made myself more available to the city and got around town a little bit more. So they thought maybe this guy just isn't strictly just a little redneck from Texas, man.
Gibby, I have two thoughts on that. One of them is that if that team had won in 2013, like was predicted, it would have been seen as you being along for the ride. Gibby's there, but he's just along for the ride. This team was built for the long haul and to win. And the fact that it didn't win, and that you then hung around 2 more years and took the 2015 team, which was, like, to a lot of Blue Jays fans, that was their first team, because 92, 93 was too old for a generation that fell in love with the Blue Jays in 2015, 2016. So in a way, that was fortunate for your image moving forward. And something else you said was interesting about, people believing, people being honest. And I know that after the 2017 Houston Astros and the firing and that they thought enough of you to call you for an interview, but probably because of that same image that you have. They needed someone to carry them out of the wilderness. You could have been like Moses. Instead, they got Dusty.
No, there's Moses over there with the long hair.
What was that process? I believe you interviewed for that job with Jim Crane or with the Astros people. Did they bring that up, that your image was like not squeaky clean, because we know better than that, but was solid in terms of coming out of that scandal that they had? Did they talk about it?
They're like rednecks down there or something. No, you know how that all happened. I was been hired by the Braves, and I had to go to Atlanta for a scouting meeting, right? And so that afternoon, I saw they came out and said Hinch was suspended by baseball for a year because of the cheating scandal. And then an hour later, Crane came out and said he's fired. So I sent a text to Hinchy, and I said, "Listen, man, hang in there," and blah blah blah, whatever. so I get to the Atlanta. He calls me that night and said, "Hey, you want this job here?" I said, "What?" He said, I'm going to recommend you to the owner. You know, we're good friends, whatever. I said, I would love that job because it's in my state of Texas. But I said, I don't like the circumstances because you're my friend. And, you know, he said, don't worry about that. That's part of it. So he said, all right. I said, since you say, yeah, I'm going to tell Crane about it. So I'm sitting in these scouting meetings the next day in Atlanta, and Jim Crane calls me on the phone, right? So I told him, hey, I'd love to come down there. He wants I said, you need to call the Braves, whatever, to clear and all that. So they called, and I flew out and went down there the next day. And Lou now, the GM was gone too, right? So he didn't have a GM. So it was just me and Crane for like 4 or 5 hours. And he had a restaurant. He owns a restaurant right around the corner from the stadium. We went there and sat there. And basically, he just kept talking about himself the whole time. I thought, this is perfect. I just kept firing it at him, man. You know, but I really like the guy, man. The guy wants to win. I liked everything he said. And I really felt good about that interview, you know. And then, of course, Dusty came in the next day, and he's done a great job. They've had nothing but success. So, yeah, then 2 weeks later, the Red Sox called because they were under investigation, too, with Cora. Remember,
Right.
he was suspended. But a totally different thing. It was just me and the owner in Houston, you know, and then when I went to Boston, Chaim Bloom had taken over. I really like Chaim, really impressed by it. But I had to run the gauntlet, man. I think I had to interview with everybody, even some ushers that worked inside the state. I mean, they ran me through the do. And then that turns out they said, well, listen, we don't know what's going to happen. Because I don't think they didn't interview very many. He said, we don't think there's anything here, but if something develops, or if it's not much to this, we're going to keep Renicky, the bench coach, because we don't want to, tear too many things apart. If not, you got a good shot at getting it. But of course, when it came out, it wasn't a whole lot there. So, but as far as the honesty, you know what? I love to have fun. I joke, but you know what? I'm convicted enough in what I believe in that,
Well, one more question before Scotty jumps in again is, how did you get away all those years with talking shit-ass politics in your office and not have anyone create a situation that was like everybody took it for what it was, tongue-in-cheek, Gibby talking. But if that was New York, if that was Boston, if that was anywhere else, that manager would have been in trouble. But it seemed more back and forth than just organic. How do we all get away with that?
Well, what can you say if you know I'm right? I mean, what's there to say?
I always knew in those office chats, which we had at 4:00 every afternoon, that when you got sick, Gibby, of the baseball on the record questions, you were going to turn to Larry Milson and make some comment about some political issue, because you and he don't see the world the same way. And that we'd all look at each other sitting on the couches in your office going, all right, that's pretty much Gibby shutting down shop.
No, well, you know what? I really, my first go around there, I'd go out in the field, do the scrum, right? And then,
right.
But then the second go around, I said, I'm going to do this in the office, man, for crying out loud. I sit behind my desk, you got couches in there, everybody can enjoy it. And it turned out, because you guys would all come in, like, say, about 3:30, we stretch at 3:20, 3:30, and we talk about 5-10 minutes of baseball, and then the rest would be life and politics, right? Yeah. And I truly miss it. I had the best time. There's no question I was outnumbered in there. And but you know what? Rosie was on my side a few times, for crying out loud. Don't forget that.
Yeah. I think you wrote a couple of her columns. She'd actually beat me up for saying that. So I better be Rosie's awesome. There's a photo of you and me talking on the field during batting practice, a game in 2017. It was taken by a friend of mine who'd brought his son to the game early, and he texted it to me right away. And so I got back to him 10 minutes later. I go, you'll never guess what Gibby and I were talking about. And he's like, oh, was he giving you a scoop? Was he this? I said, North Korea, and I didn't bring it up. Classic.
Hey, you didn't know I was so well versed, did you?
Oh, I learned quick. The other thing, Gibby, just lastly about evolving and being beloved in Toronto. I think with the younger generation, social media plays a huge part. And so you developed almost a cult personality without even knowing it, because, you know, when you went to the mound and you called for Pat Venditti and you did both hands, or you did the double barrel in the dugout, those became GIFs and memes on Twitter and on the internet. And so you were just everywhere. You probably didn't even know it, but you were everywhere. And so, you know, I really think that helped to feed sort of Gibby, the manager, Gibby, this character. You know, I thought it was a lot of fun.
Well, I'm a serious guy, but I try not to be. You know, I don't take myself too seriously. But I remember those things well. You know, Venditti, you know, in his case, it was like, I don't know, just somebody. I don't know, man. I don't know which one's going to get.
Maybe you throw the ball with your foot.
Exactly. But you know, the social media thing. You know, when my book came out, they said, well, you need a social media to advertise. I go, really? I said, I'm 50 something, 59, 60. I said, really? I said, I've been on Facebook before. That got me in trouble. So anyway, so they said, well, now you need to do it. I said, okay. So I started it up, right? And then especially when we did the podcast, he said, you got to be on there. So I check with my kids. I say, hey, I need help with this, blah, blah, blah. And it's almost the stupider things you say or do, man, the more they like it, you know? And it's funny though, my mother, she's 85 now. She's a big critic, big fan, but big critic. She says, Johnny, she says, Boston lady, Johnny, she says, you're everywhere, man. Every time I turn on that, not Facebook, the other one, Instagram, I see you every day. I said, you need to back off. You're on that. People are seeing you too much. So maybe she's got a point there, but it's been kind of crazy, especially I'm almost a senior citizen.
Gibby, I need you to talk to Debbie, my wife, about the stupider things you say, the more they like you.
But hey, that's with you. That only works with you, Griff.
All right. I also need you to take us on the chronological road, which was in my column when I went to San Antonio. Just the road from you not being hired on Bobby Valentine's staff, so deciding in a snit that you were going to quit your AAA job at Tidewater, and how you ended up eating a sandwich at Yankee Stadium and being hired as manager. Take us through that, because I thought that was the greatest thread of a career that I've heard.
Hey, Griff, you can't make this stuff up, man.
No,
no, you know what? Because my playing career came to an end. It wasn't real good, so I got into coaching. You know, it wasn't like I was kind of getting that age. The real world wasn't knocking on my door. Hey, you want a job? You know, so I was too old for the military. So, you know, I'd been in the AAA with the Mets 3 years managing. Usually, in Bobby Valentine was a manager in the big league, and he went through coaches left and right. You know, he got tired of them, or they got tired of him, or something, right? So normally, the AAA manager just slides in one of those spots sooner or later, right? And but I couldn't get a job, so finally, I told that Jim Duquette was the assistant GM, Steve Phillips was the GM. I told Duke, because they wanted me to go back AAA for 4th year manage. I said, I can't do that. I got young kids. I said, I've been dragging around them my whole life. I got to get home, help them out, or do something closer to home, right? So I'm not going back. So anyway, so they said, okay, well, the Mets third base job's open. Go up there and interview with Valentine and Phillips. So I went up and interviewed. I didn't get that. So then you guys know Marty Noble. Marty was always good to me. Wrote an article, and Steve Phillips didn't like it, right? So Steve calls me and says, hey, I saw that article, blah, blah, blah. I said, we're gonna have to cut you loose or something. I said, Steve, I told Duquette I ain't come back anyway, man. You're a little late. Don't worry about it. So anyway, so that's how, but okay. So now Billy Beane, was, you know, running the A's out there on Moneyballer. He'd always told me, hey, if you ever want a job, you need a job, come out here, Oakland, just let me know, right? But they were cheap, they had no money, and they were very successful at the time. But that was my ace in the hole, right? But I didn't check with him before when I told Mets I'm not coming back. So, but JP Ricciardi was his right-hand man. So anyway, so next thing you know, Bean doesn't have a spot for me, and I get it. You can't replace anybody. I wasn't looking for a big league job. I was looking at minor league, anything. But they just can't bring any people on, very many at a like that, because they don't have the money. So anyway, I said, this is good, you know. So next thing, so JP's trying to help me find a job, right? He's calling around other teams and nothing's happening. So one day I called Bean and I said, listen, he goes, let me call you back. JP's doing a press conference. I said, really? Okay. And then he gets a job in Toronto. I think they were going to hire D Podesta or something, and then he backed out or something happened. Then they hired JP, I thought, something like that. So I thought, yeah. So I thought, perfect. He's been trying to help me find a job. He'll at least have something for me. So he calls and says, hey, we got a third base coach job and a bullpen catcher job is the only jobs up here. He said, come up and interview. He brought me and Carlos Tosca up there, Buck was the manager. So I go and interview and Tosca gets a job and he says, you want the bullpen catcher job? I thought, no chance, man. I ain't squatted in 10 years. I said, but so I get home and stupid me and my wife at the time says, I had 2 weeks left on my Mets contract I said, I need a job because I just moved back to Texas and I bought a new house and I got 3 kids, right? I said, I need a job. So I called JP and I said, yeah, I'll take that job, out of necessity. And so anyway, so I got the first day of spring training, I show up, I'm squatting and my knee blew up on me, right? So I'm the bullpen catcher.
First
can't
day.
catch. Yeah, they can't catch. So the other catchers are going, what, you got to be kidding me. But it was like the perfect job for me because that's what I did in my whole career, right? Bullpen catcher. So anyway, then next thing you know, he fires Buck in I think at the beginning of June. Put
The
me
end
at
of the
first.
Detroit series. Swept Detroit and then fired him.
He thought, for crying out loud, we can't let him win too many more games, man. We won't be able to do it. And then he made Tosca the manager and then hired Brian Butterfield, who'd been just cut loose by the Yankees, AAA. And that's how it all started. Then a couple years after that, where I was walking through Yankee Stadium, just looking for a sandwich, like you said. And there it is.
There you go.
Yeah.
I did tell Charlie Montoyo when they gave him an extension mid-season, I said, be careful now because Gibby got an extension and got let go in Pittsburgh. He woke up and he was without a job. And damn if it didn't happen to Charlie too.
Oh, I just think, man, an extension, he could buy him a new pair of bunk. But were you helping him with the bongo drums? Were you helping?
Yeah, no, those are all my videos. You can see them like shaking around. Those are my videos.
We always.
I do tell Alex Andropoulos, the bullpen catcher in Toronto. He's been there for years.
He's still there.
I said, listen, if you play your cards right, you'll be managing this team, man. Just don't cause any problem.
But he's got 2 good knees, though.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
We used to raise a toast every New Year's Eve, Gibby, to you wherever you were because we knew your contract was rolling over.
That's right.
Another year
over
for
my
Gibby.
grave. My grave. Yeah, that was a Beeston deal, I guess. Beeston.
The rollover?
Yeah, the rollover. That way you could hold the money down too,
We've talked ad nauseum about the 7th inning of Game 5 of the 2015 Division Series, the intensity, the stadium was shaking, being in that moment. But I had a chance last summer when Dale Scott, the home plate umpire, who's now retired, was doing his book tour to host his Toronto event. And Dale's an old radio guy from before his umpiring days. So when if you ever get a chance to hear Dale speak, do it. Because, he's not shy. He's a great storyteller, all that stuff. But he told the story from his perspective of the conversation he had with you when you came out to ask why Rougned Odor had scored from third on Russell Martin's throw that hit Shin-Soo Choo's bat, rolled up the line, and gave Texas a 1-run lead in the top half of that inning. That, of course, everything got rectified when Jose bat flipped and hit the 3-run bomb in the bottom of the 7th. What do you remember? And I'll do my best to remember what Dale said at his event 15 months ago or so. But what do you remember of that conversation with Dale? Because he tells a really funny story.
Hey, first I thought Dale, I think we were in the Texas League together. When I was a player and he was just coming up to the big leagues, climbing the umpire ladder. Yeah, always one of the good guys, right? And no, all I can remember, you see it happen, and he throws his hands up, right? Ball trickles down, and I can remember thinking, it wasn't I was consciously thinking, but I thought that's got to be a dead. I mean, he can't score on that. It's like a dead ball, which if you common sense tells you no, it's not a dead ball, but. And I could not remember ever seeing that. So I'm thinking, well, dead, but he's gonna, and I saw him do this. Okay, right. And so then all hell really broke loose, when they all got together. But I went out there, I said, thinking he didn't know what the rule was either, and then when they all got together, it's funny, nobody really knew because it's a very rare thing. You don't see it, And then you add the pressure of the moment, Mag, a screaming madhouse that place was. But yeah, I can't remember everything I said to him, but basically it's got, when they change, it's like, you gotta be wrong, man. You ain't that smart or something, or, I don't like this rule, something like that. Right. And, but it's like, no, we don't obey the laws down here in this country anymore. Anyway, so why do we got to obey this rule? Let's change it so we can, to benefit us. Right. We're the home team. But finally, they finally got it right. But I can remember there was, I make light of it now, but it was an intense situation, right? The season's on the line. We're running out of innings here, and but it was like I think there's very few people. Even Jeff Bannister will tell you, "Oh, you missed a rule book." Like he didn't know the rules either. Right? But he was sticking his chest out. Oh yeah, right. But finally they did end up getting it right. Of course, it cost us there, but I was a catcher. I never had it happen to me. Russell never. It's like. But they handled it right. They handled it like pros.
Well, the
best thing, man, if we don't come back and win that game, there's no way you're hosting Dale Scott's event because he wouldn't have made it out of there alive.
I remember saying to the guy sitting next to me, Dave Naylor of TSN at the time, I said, Dave, we got to find cots. If this team loses 3-2, we got to find cots because we can't leave this stadium till tomorrow morning. But the funny part of what Dale Scott said, because, especially as a kid, or if you're not really around it, you watch baseball sort of loosely, and a manager and an umpire go face to face, and they're intense, they're arguing. You're thinking like, man, it isn't just F you and this and that and the other thing. They're actually getting down to the nitty gritty here and figuring out what the problem is and trying to come to some sort of a agreement on the ruling and blah blah blah. Dale Scott tells the story where he admitted to you he screwed up by throwing up his hands. So he copped to it. He owned it. And then he explained to you what the rule was. And you're like, well, I don't like the rule. Which I just thought, it's a perfect response because you said nobody knew what the rule was. And the rule is kind of stupid. Chu might have left his bat hanging over the plate on purpose.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Punish him. Yeah.
I don't like the rule.
Yeah, what the heck, man? That's not fair. And of course, the guy that scored the run is our old nemesis. Who really came back to the next year. But I'm telling you though, you don't see that often. It's tough on those umpires too, man. The rule book is in depth. Real quick story here. I can remember we hit out an order. This is my first go round there. We adjusted the lineup, and there was a confusion on the lineup that was put up. And so we're playing the game. We're playing Seattle, and we flipped Overbay and somebody. Anyway, they hit out of order, right? Somebody hits a double. Aaron Hill. It was Hilly. So John McLaren comes out of the dugout and says they hit out of order. Blah blah. So all the umpires and me and McLaren. There's 6 of us behind home plate, and McClellan, the big umpire, been around forever. They couldn't figure out how to set this thing, man. The batting out of order. They're going, well, should we do this? And they go, no. And so it's so little different rule, but it's like, of course, it wasn't the pressure of a playoff game either. But it's like, when you don't, there's rare things that happen when you don't see them that often. It can be very confusing, But they got it right. But lucky for them, we came back and won.
Gibby, referring back to that inning, I was sitting next to Rosie DiMano in the press box, and the ball hit the bat. The thing went crazy. He wouldn't overturn it, even though he'd called time. And I turned to Rosie and said, Rosie, don't start writing yet, because there's no way that the baseball gods will allow this series to end on that play. And then 3-run homer, Jose bat flip over my shoulder here. But I hate to
Yes.
tell you also that if Jose hadn't hit that ball and won that game, you would not be doing the Gibby show.
No.
You
No.
would not be doing the Gibby show. So thank Jose for that.
No, I would have been buried underneath that stadium with Dale
Oh,
Scott.
hell yeah.
Oh yeah. Hey, I have a lot to thank Jose for. There's no doubt about it.
I got a question about current baseball and if you were managing still. I mean, when you were hired this 2012 for the 13 season, Alex Anthopoulos said that one of your strengths was handling the bullpen. How much of handling the bullpen is being taken away from managers these days because of analytics, because of the proper lanes to bring a guy in for his 3 batters? I mean, a lot of the intuitive nature of handling a bullpen has been taken away. How would you have handled that?
Well, I got to say, when Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins took over, analytics was coming on the scene heavier and heavier, right? And they wanted me to use that more, but they gave me the freedom to do what I wanted, right? Because I you know what, and I've always looked at numbers, not the in-depth that some of the craziness we look at now, but I was aware of the numbers, but I viewed things a little bit differently, and I knew who we had in the bullpen. We didn't have as many top-notch guys as these guys got now, but I think what's happened, yeah, it's almost they take the manager off the hook now, right? Because I think, and not just because of the way they kind of map things out, but the fact that you have to face 3 hitters. I think they look at this guy's 3 best guys to face are right here. And so basically all you got to do is line it up depending on what inning you're in, right? So they kind of, managers are off the hook, but yet they're still going to take the blame. The front office is going to.
Oh, for sure.
Right. But I think what hurts the game too now is starters don't go as long, so you end up burning up those guys in the bullpen regardless. But it used to be like a juggling act, or putting a a puzzle. You have to piece these guys together, keep them rested. You got a certain night this guy can't pitch, but there's no doubt if you got the better your bullpen, the better manager you are. There's no question about it. And of course, back then you had your closer, then you had your setup guy, and maybe that 7th inning guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you just if you got to that point where they were all available, you just ran them. If the starter was running into trouble, if you're behind, you go to the other guy. So a lot of that was dictated too. But now everything's done for you. I don't think I wouldn't enjoy that much as much because it really, I don't think there's a lot of thinking going on. It's
right.
kind of this is the way it's laid out, and that's why I don't think the game's as fun anymore. But it is what it is.
Talk about the game not being fun. How about when they bring robo-umps in? Who are you going to argue with?
Exactly. Dale knew when to get out, didn't he? Yeah. You know what? I guess they're doing that in the minor leagues. Have you guys heard how that's gone a little bit, or part?
Scotty, you know about that?
Well, all we've been told by the commissioner is that it's not coming to Major League Baseball next year. So,
yeah,
they're not satisfied with where it's at yet. It's not going to be a fail safe, but I just think, Gibby, generally, it's not a competency issue. I just don't know how these umpires, and we see them struggle a lot. You got 102 miles an hour with movement, and then you've got a vicious breaking ball that's 89 to 91 with movement. It's as tough a gig, and yet there's a hitter in either batter's box for every at bat, and that pitch can be a third or a half an inch off the outer half of the plate or inner half of the plate, and don't they know it? And based on the K box, they're almost always right.
Those guys are good. The majority of them. What I think it hurts some major league umpires is the same ones are there every year. There's no if this guy has a bad year, I won't name names. He keeps showing up the next year. If you guys don't do your job in the media, they find somebody else. If managers, team's not playing well, they get rid of umpires. They get rewarded or something, and certain guys never leave. That's and maybe there's just not enough guys to pick from, not enough guys that want to actually get into being a professional umpire. But by God, but because the majority of them are pretty good, and it's very difficult to do what they're doing. And there's something about the human element I think is important for baseball. It's now we treat everybody, especially the players, like robots. So that's what I dislike about it all. The rule changes, you can't block a play, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm probably in the minority.
I got a question about that aspect of it, Gibby. Like, how are you going to convince young players that catching is something that you want to do? How do you get better as a catcher? How do you present the ball as good as some of these major league catchers do to get strikes when it's a machine? How do you convince somebody to put the equipment on if there's no skill involved in that?
Yeah, I mean that's gone. It doesn't, because a lot of guys, there's a lot of guys with big league jobs behind the plate now because they're good framers, they call them, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's so now it'll probably, I'm sure, go back to just like we're looking for all offense, the defensive guy, because you don't have to block the plate, you don't have to have the art of that. There's a lot of different, guys are running wild on the bases because there's new rules, so you don't necessarily have to throw guys out. So it's probably go back to that time where the steroid era where they want guys to just thump it, right?
Yeah.
But you know what? What's funny when I watch catchers now, you remember this well. You see catchers when they catch the ball, like they'll jerk it a foot, right?
Oh God, yeah.
And your son was a catcher. The umpires used to get all over you, man, and everybody's, that's a kid. That ain't gonna work, right? They think you're trying to trick them. But I can remember when Russell Martin first came over to us. Russ, he's the first catcher I really ever saw that, or at least that I locked in on. He would start with his mid up here, right, the strike zone, and then as the guy was going to his motor, he'd drop it down to the ground and catch it coming up, right? But he was the only one doing it at that time, and that would allow him to catch the ball in the upswing and get that low strike. Now that's all anybody does. So Russell was ahead of the game there, because a lot of times guys would drop their glove and down. The next thing they're raising it, and they're late, and the ball's eating them up because it's thrown so hard or it's moving and things like that. But yeah, I you know what, the game's changing so much. There's some good things that are happening, but sometimes, a great game like that, maybe you ought to leave a lot of it alone.
Well, what do you think about catching on one knee, even with runners on base?
Oh,
that's part of probably why it's easier to steal bases right now.
Exactly. It's funny too. I got all these stories, right? When I was working for the Braves, Alex Anthopoulos sent me to their AAA team to, he said, watch their starters pitch twice and watch, there's a handful of position players, right? It was in Gwinnett. And so I'm going there, and, I hadn't seen a lot of major league games or even minor league games. And I see the catchers are on their knee, right? And even guys on base, I'm going. So I called him about something did he want me to look at whatever. And I said, hey, catchers, they all catching on their knees. And he said, yeah, that's kind of the new way of doing it. They get the low pass. I said, really? Okay. So meanwhile, in that whole series, I saw a couple guys they had no range. They couldn't get the couple balls, the guys on third, and they score. But then I saw a game maybe a month ago down in Tampa in the big leagues. Tampa's up by three runs in the top of the ninth. They're at home. They get whoever they're playing get the bases loaded. 3 wild pitches. The catcher's on his knees. 3 wild pitches. They tie the game. Tampa came back and won it. But I'm thinking, my gosh, you mean to tell me like the Gary Carters, the Carlton Fists, the Johnny Bench, they didn't get the low strike back then? I mean, they weren't real good catching the ball. I ain't buying it.
I think there are some bullpen catchers circa 2002 who should have maybe done the whole one knee thing at the time.
That's all he had left.
Hey, there's one guy. You'll remember this guy, Griff. Remember Glenn Brummer for the St. Louis Cardinals?
Yeah.
Remember, he was the backup catcher for the Cardinals back then. He was always a guy on a knee. He got down on a knee. I don't know how he got away with it because I think Whitey was his manager. But he was always on a knee, even with some guys on first base. But he's the guy everybody look at. If you got down on one knee, they jump all over you, man.
I remember as a kid, didn't Tony Pena do that a lot?
Yeah, I was thinking Tony Pena.
Yeah, but with nobody on base.
Nobody on base.
Nobody on base.
Nobody on base. Yeah. Tony was. Yeah, he was. Yeah. So what are you
gonna do? You got any more for Gibby before we let him go? It's we've been a great conversation here for probably over the amount of time we told Gibby would keep him. But
that's all right, man. I go all day with you guys.
What do you got, Scotty?
I was just admiring that Miller Lite T-shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
we go.
You got Tim Hortons around somewhere?
What? What?
Well,
Well,
imagine that. There's going to have to be a Timmy Hose opening in San Antonio.
And there's 3 of them in Houston. 200
Are you
miles down the
kidding?
road. I don't know why there's not one here.
Wow, they've spread that far.
Let's
All
start.
right.
The 3 of us will start a franchise.
oh God, yeah.
Oh god,
I
the
might
only
have
problem with
to,
that. The
It
only
only
problem with
goes
that,
so
you might have to come down here a few times.
yeah, I might have to work in the kitchen. Unless
I'll
you
work
talk
the
to my
cash.
wife.
I'll work the cash. I'll guard the cash with my life.
There you go.
Hey,
promise you-
Griff, you ain't ever been in the kitchen. What are you talking about? All of a
Oh
sudden-
yeah.
Gib, just like a final thought on your, particularly your 2015 team, but really your 15 and 16 teams. And you touched on it. We were discussing it a little earlier about personality and letting players be themselves, and guys are becoming almost too robotic. And sometimes I watch more recent Blue Jays teams and feel like there are players out there that their bosses are trying to condition them to fit some kind of culture that's being preached. Whereas I always envisioned your Blue Jays teams in 15 and 16, guys like Bautista, Donaldson, Edwin in his own way, getting off the bus in the bowels of Fenway Park or Yankee Stadium or the Oakland Coliseum, which generally was a bowel,
Oh.
almost quite literally.
Not for much longer.
Yeah. But almost coming off the bus with both middle fingers up in the air saying, we're going to beat you today and we're going to beat you down. And I just think there was a lot of relatability, and part of the reason, aside from the winning and some of the playoff success, didn't win a World Series, but had a lot of playoff success that you did have, was that those guys walked the walk, or in cases like Josh Donaldson, Jose Bautista talked the talk and then backed it up with the walk.
Yeah, you know what, Scotty? That was a fun group. There was a lot of personalities. It was a high maintenance group now too. But I always, I always believed, and I know I'm right. As a manager, your job's to get the most out of the players the GM gives you. Yeah, you'll talk to GM, you might discuss acquiring this guy or that guy. But a lot of your best players out there in the game, they're volatile guys. They're emotional guys, and that's a big reason a lot of them are good. But Josh Donaldson had his issues out in Oakland, and he's still having them. When he's had some things along the way, but he's also in the MVP race every year, right? So does that mean you're not going to acquire him? But your manager ought to be able to handle him. I figure I could do that, right? Bautista was the same way. Russell Martin, was an emotional guy. Because now it's different if the player you get is a pain in the ass, but he's not very good. That's now okay. It's a little different. But when you get these top really good players, okay, that's really how managers earn their bucks. I mean, it's not X's and O's like football and some of the other. I mean, we try to make it that nowadays, but it's still pretty a simple game. If you got talent, run the boys out there and keep them focused on the right thing. Right now, I said those guys are the show. People are coming to watch those guys play. Let them do their thing. Now, if they get a little crazy, they're disrupting the team or something's going. Okay, now you gotta whatever, however you want to handle it, right? But that's what a manager's job is. My job is I'm not gonna outsmart the other guy too often, because it's basically everybody does the same things at a certain time. But good, I don't care what you say, because you look at some guys that have been very successful managers. They're not taking teams that have no talent and winning. No, every team that gets to the postseason is because there's talent on the team. There may be a couple freak things that happen, but that's your number one job. So, hey, and I'm a low key guy. I'm not a micromanager. I'd let the coaches do the job, but hey, boys, go out there and do your thing, man. You're good. And now,
the culture, when you talked about culture in the dugout in the clubhouse, I thought you were talking MMA culture, like with Ted Lilly, Cahill, and Brand.
That was my first.
Kevin
That was my
Pillar.
first go. Hey, Griff, though, like I said, you know what? Hey, you still got to be a boss. There's got to be a boss somewhere, right?
Oh yeah.
Every now and
No,
then,
I admired every one of those occasions, and one of the
you gotta have these too.
Yeah. right here.
There it is.
Scotty, one of the funniest moments at a winter meetings was we were going to the GM's suite for a meeting, and the Cubs door was open, and Ted Lilly was in there. He was had an executive position with the Cubs, and there were writers following behind Gibby down the hall, and he saw Ted Lilly, and he pretended to be going in there to challenge him, and the writers were all like, "What the hell?" That was one of the funniest moments.
Hey, Griff, how about Teddy being an executive with
Yeah.
the Cubbies?
That's as surprising as Tito Francona being a manager with the Indians. I had him from day one of his professional
That's
career.
right.
And I thought,
That's right.
there's no way this guy is ever going to be a coach or a manager, and he's going to the Hall of Fame at some point.
Is this it for him? I've been hearing some things he's going to shut it down after this year.
It sounds like it, yeah. And I
Yeah.
saw him when he was in with the Guardians or whatever you call them, and he was, he seemed pretty content about that.
Yeah.
So he's
Yeah,
good.
he's had an incredible career, you know.
Yep.
But hey, there's a guy, perfect guy. I think he let the boys do their thing,
Yeah.
you know. And you know, he took the bullets for him, not literally, but you know.
I mean, they had a clubhouse that was, I mean, first of all, it's so tiny at Fenway Park, and he let them do their thing. They're dressing on top of one another. They're there every day. And remember when they brought that tiny person in? I would call him a midget, but that would be politically incorrect right now.
You just did. Yeah.
Oh, we could edit that out, I think.
Oh, hey, you know what? You know, sometimes it's an animal. You know, the best teams are like it's like an animal house. Sometimes, you know, they're with each other every day. They have fun together. They fight together. I was part of the '86 Mets for a couple of years. It's hard to compare any other team to that as far as this, right? But bottom line is you're winning, you know.
Well, I do know one thing, Gibby, and thanks for joining us. But I do know that Scotty would not have lasted as long as he did, covering every game on the road for 3 straight years if you hadn't been in the manager's office. So,
Hey, listen,
I agree with that.
That
Hey,
is
I tell you,
true.
hey, well, you know, hey, my pleasure, man. You know what? You're 2 of my all-time favorites. You know, two of the good guys. You know, in a tough racket, right? You know, managers in the media, people. You're not always going to agree on everything. You guys got a job to do, and it's not always going to be fun and games. You know, it's not always going to agree with what I say, but it's reality, right? You guys got to report the truth. I got to say, the guys that covered us, it wasn't fake news. You guys were actually telling it like it is. Say so. So,
Wow, that's
so anyway,
backhandedest compliment I've ever heard.
So it's been a pleasure, boys, and I miss it, man. I miss seeing you guys on a regular basis, and I'm glad you had me on your show.
Thanks.
I was beautifully ended with a backhanded compliment, Gib, and we'd expect no less. Expect no less, and I can't wait to see you in person. This is going to actually be, for me, my first chance to step foot in 2 Canadian provinces because Lloydminster is a border town. So I'll be in Alberta for the first time, and I'm going to make sure I get across the border to Saskatchewan. But we're doing the night of champions, or the evening of champions, for the Lloydminster Bobcats Junior A team on Thursday night, September 7th, about a week and a half from now as we sit here. So it'll be awesome to see you. And you got dinner on the Wednesday night, right?
Of course, dude. I've been what did you just like Griff just said a minute. I've been carrying you for how long now? We're crying out loud. You're getting heavy, dude.
Thanks, Gib. It was awesome.
All right, boys. I'll see
Thanks,
you. I'll
Gibby.
see you in 10 days.
You bet.
Not me, but him for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gibby. Appreciate it.
All right.
And that puts a wrap on episode 17 of the Exit Philosophy podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Great to get Gib on. Griff and I expect to have guests coming on in the near future, as well as we roll into the fall and the stretch drive of the baseball season. We'll do it again next Monday. Thank you for listening.